It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
So, Tammy, today we're talking all about ranching. We've got a young couple that we're going to feature on this podcast. Farm life, very active in Farm Bureau.
And they're from Southern Arizona, right?
Yes,
From
Stafford,
Stafford?
Arizona. So,
Yes. I can't wait to hear more.
yes, and they know everything about beef and quality beef, and they're both from generational ranch families. So, it's Ben and Ashley Mingus from Stafford, Arizona. So I always say Southeast ranchers, and they are very involved in the Arizona Farm Bureau. Ben happens to be the second vice president of the Arizona Farm Bureau on the state board. And then Ashley, not more than a year ago, within the last year, stepped down from the chair of the Arizona Farm Bureau's Young Farmer and Rancher program. Ashley also works for the University of Arizona's Extension Service. And then, Ben, you're in full-time ranching, correct?
Correct.
Running the family farm, okay, or the family ranch. Excuse me, that's almost
Hey, we
like
actually just, as of May 5th, we bought a farm, so we could say we're farmers. It's a very small farm, but
oh yeah.
Congratulations.
thank you.
Well, farm and ranch. Okay, well, be prepared because I'm going to start asking you, Ben, down the road a lot of farm-related questions.
Okay.
But he'll be ready for it because both Ben and Ashley do some amazing volunteer leadership work on behalf of the Arizona Farm Bureau and cattle growers and everything else they do. So my first question, and this is Ashley may be stressing a little bit because both of them also have the two little kids. Ivy is 2 and Jeffrey is 5 months now.
Yep, that's right.
I have to say that I was initiated because I love babies and I love to hold them. And the last time I got to hold Jeffrey, he kind of burped up on me.
Oh.
and I loved it. I thought it was fun. But the first question I want to ask you guys, and this is for both Ashley and Ben, I remember having a conversation with you not too long ago where you were comparing and contrasting how even within Arizona, ranching can be different. Ranching up north, where your family is from, Ashley and Ben. So kind of make that comparison and contrast. And Ashley, if you want to go first, go for it.
Yeah, I remember when we got married and I moved out here and I thought I knew. I'm like, I know everything there is to know about ranching. And I soon got a little bit of a reality check. So my mom's family ranches in northern Arizona where we brand everything on a calf table. And I moved out here with Ben where his family brands everything by dragging it to the fire. And so that was a really neat experience. Even things as far as how we castrate our cattle is extremely different. We use an emasculator and Ben and them used knives. I never had to have shoes on my horses to go out on the ranch outside of Holbrook because our ground was so soft. Here, there's no way that we could round up our cattle without having shot our horses because we have so much rock up here. And even things as far as straps. We wear straps. Ben has to wear straps on the daily because there's so much brush. And in Holbrook, I can see for miles. So I always think that's so interesting. Within just our own state, people do things so differently. And so it really makes you kind of open your eyes to the fact that people producing beef throughout the country do things very differently depending on where they are, what the weather's like, what the terrain's like. And I think that's a little bit of a beauty because they put their own little touches to the way they've done things. And some of that has been passed on generationally. And so I think it makes it neat that even if you're a rancher, you can always visit somebody and learn a new way of doing that.
That's awesome. And listeners, the shodding a horse is basically putting shoes on on them. But it's anybody in equine gets that. But sometimes if they haven't ever heard us use that word, and that's SHOD, right? Shod. Yeah, I think so. Ben, do you have any kind of additions to what Ashley just described?
Oh, I just think every ranch is different, even within the county. In Graham County, every ranch is different. And everybody has their own ideas of branding or grazing. There's some rest rotational grazing going on, and there's ranches where that doesn't happen. And I think that's one of the remarkable things about Arizona ranching is that it's so diverse. So, I view that as a strength. We might all ranch different, but we can agree on some common issues that we want to address at times. And so, yeah, I think that it's really a blessing to have so many different ideas on ranching.
And Ben, you're from Southern Arizona, and Ashley, you're from Northern Arizona. How did the two of you meet and eventually end up together?
Well, we both attended the University of Arizona. Bear down, go Wildcats. And that's where we, yeah, had the pleasure of meeting. We have a lot of mutual friends, and so we were at mutual events together. We both have a bachelor's in business economics, and then we were also both on the university's lifestyle judging team, just at different years. Ben's a little older than me, so I want to make that note there.
They could tell.
Well, I have to, Ashley, I want you to give more details to that story, even though I know you're multitasking right now. Oh, and there's little Jeffrey.
That's
I love
right.
it for anybody that's watching this on YouTube. There's little Jeffrey. So, but you guys were both in Young Farmer and Rancher together. And what did you do to?
Yeah, I always joke that the way that Ben and I tell this story is a little different. So I'll give you my perspective on it. We dated a little bit in college, and then he had graduated and he moved to the ranch, and he was kind of starting his professional life, and I was still at the U of A, and so we maintained a friendship. And then years later, once I graduated, I became the wife in our state chair, and Ben was serving as the Graham County chair. And so he reached out and asked me for an itinerary of events for the program throughout the year. And I sent him a picture of an itinerary, and on the bottom, I wrote, "Take Ashley out to dinner." And so ever since, it kind of worked out. And so we credit ourselves for truly being a Farm Bureau couple. That story really helped us. I think Ben and I, we competed in a wife in our an American wife in our contest a few years ago, where you had to give a presentation to the judges. And I think that story really resonates with people because it's memorable, and it's always fun to tell in Farm Bureau circles.
I love it.
And is that how you remember the story, Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah, but she doesn't like it because she says then it looks like I chased you, or that she chased me, yeah, and rather than me chasing her, which that's not the truth.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. And so that's why when I tell it, I always say we dated first and then we were friends. And when he says it, he leaves that part out.
Well, there's a whole new dimension to the Mingus family and ranching and being volunteer leaders. Now you're parents. What insights has that brought to you? Maybe a deeper appreciation of what you do in ranch life. Talk about that a little bit. We'll start with you, Ben.
Oh, I just think that there's no better way to raise kids than on a farm or a ranch, watching something grow, taking care of animals. You learn responsibility, you learn trustworthiness, you learn things that are invaluable for any direction that the kids might go in their lives. They don't have to be farmers or ranchers to learn, the lesson to need the qualities that are useful on a farm or a ranch. I feel very blessed to have grown up on a cattle ranch. But I know that a lot of farm kids, they have the same chores and the same responsibilities. You learn honesty, you learn how to problem solve. There's so many things that go into farming and ranching that are just useful in every aspect of your life. And I think that it's just such a blessing now that we have kids to be able to share that with them.
Yeah. And I'd say that really I had felt that way before we had kids, and now it's really solidified when I see our daughter, especially because she's in that age where she goes out with Ben to check waters, and she rides horses with him, and she gets to experience all of those things. And so really to get to see her face light up when she gets to do that and experience her love for animals. She loves the horses. Our kind of ritual every night has been to go feed all as a family. And so it's really, I think, grounded us. And then on top of that, I always think it's a great reminder for people who aren't involved in agriculture that the products that we're raising or growing, we're feeding to our families. And so it's extremely important that we ensure that they are being grown and raised the best way possible because we're utilizing them to feed and clothe the families that we have as well.
Yeah, there's a sign out in front of our ranch that said, sorry, what was that? Oh, okay. There's a sign out in front of our ranch that says this ranch feeds 5,070 American families, and so I think that that's something that it is a project that the Beef Council, Beef Checkoff put up. So anyway, our camera is moving because of the baby, but
I love it. It's a family affair. And one of
But
the things I do want to say real quickly is that your two kids are absolutely precious and they're a good blend of both of you.
Thanks, I appreciate
you know,
that.
you mentioned you mentioned you feed 5,000 families. That's amazing. That's amazing. And beef is in such demand right now. I mean, we're seeing a real resurgence of it, and yet herds are tight. How do you manage, your herds in terms of when you expand or when you cut back, or economically, how do you determine what to do?
well, last year was one of the worst droughts that we've ever experienced. It is the worst drought that my dad, who's been ranching for over 40 years, he's ever experienced. We normally go through around 4 loads of hay a year here, and we went through 38 last year. We were just trying to keep our cows alive and in good shape and able to breed back. Um, and so we were faced with a choice whether to sell our cows and try to buy back, or try to keep the cows and just try to feed yourself through the drought. Unfortunately, we had some winter rains, and so we were grateful that it kind of worked out in that way. But there's so many vacant allotments. We ranch on federal land, and our each each section of is called an allotment, and there are vacant allotments throughout BLM and Forest Service across this nation. There's 84 just in Forest Service in Arizona and New Mexico, and so we're not producing all the beef that we can right now simply because of the federal government's regulations on a policy, or on a law called NEPA, which is the National Environmental Policy Act, and that's preventing these allotments from being filled. Thankfully, the Trump administration has prioritized this and filling these vacant allotments so that we could produce beef, and we're grateful that the top of the administration and the secretaries have made this a priority, but we would like that to be at the local level too. We're not seeing the local individuals actually implement this, filling these vacant allotments, and so I think I'm optimistic that if we do fill these allotments, that the beef herd can expand for our nation, and thereby lower prices. But like you said, the demand for beef is high, and so it's finally not as demonized. For years, red meat was demonized, and I think that was unfair, and so that's something that is refreshing to see.
Yeah,
It
consumers really want more protein in their diet, and
right.
one of the best sources of protein is beef.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's almost like a reawakening in the consumer because they know that meat and dairy are nutrient dense,
Mhm.
and you can get so much and so many nutrients in just simply having beef and some vegetables and a glass of milk. Yeah.
Exactly.
these people have eaten beef for 45 years. They're on the carnivore diet. They've eaten just steaks. And so how many other products do we know that where you can eat just one thing? I don't know.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, beyond herd size, what other economic pressures are hitting Arizona ranchers hardest right now? You have to look at feed costs, there's market volatility, um, or is it one issue that's bigger than another we're not really seeing or looking at? But your boots on the ground, literally boots on the ground, Ben. So, how is your family adapting and changing things on your operation? You kind of alluded to it as it related to the drought and having to reduce your herd, but are there any other things that you're doing?
Well, we ranch on, like I said, on federal lands, and so that comes with a lot of different regulations, and I think that would be probably the number one um pressure that we're getting is uh the Endangered Species Act and the National Environmental Policy Act. They are laws that are not familiar to the general public, but they affect my life every day. And so they have prevented us. We use about 2/3 of our ranch, and because of the National Environmental Policy Act, we're not able to use the other 1/3. And so I would like to see that changed, where you would be able to expand our improvements, expand waters in the upland areas, and be able to expand our herd size. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think that and what Ben kind of hit on that last question is a lot of regulations and on-field allotments, at least in this part of the country.
I want to go back to, though, you had talked a little bit about the drought and how that's affected things. Let's talk a little bit about water system and I know Julie had said you have over 100 miles of pipeline for water, and um, talk a little bit about how that's affected and what the drought caused, and how's that influenced grazing.
So we actually had 4 wells go dry last year, and so we were able to get water from our nearby copper mine, and so that was a real blessing for us, or else we would have been hauling water. All of the water that we use is pumped via solar power, and so it's brought to our cows with 0 emissions. And so I don't know if we could say that about the water we drink, but if our cows could talk, they would be able to say that. But
And I did want to add on one of the questions about how we made it through the drought is the connections that we've made through associations such as the Arizona Farm Bureau have really just proven to be invaluable. We were looking for pasture to send some of our kind of higher quality cattle to. And through a connection with the Arizona Farm Bureau, we found a rancher who had some pasture outside of Cochise County, and we were able to send them there. And I think that just shows that being involved in organizations like this, we're able to create those relationships with other agriculturalists, and they really pull through in times of need. I remember him telling Ben that he wanted to help Ben out because he remembered when he had first gotten his start, there was another rancher who helped him. And so he was passing along that favor. So being a part of organizations like this are not only valuable because we're able to like lobby and educate consumers, but create these relationships with agriculturists throughout the state.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
that is a neat story that you share, and I hear that so often amongst farmers and ranchers. It's kind of that pay it forward philosophy in helping one another, and you hear this all the time. A barn burns down, everybody shows up and builds it back up in a day. I think we can give the Amish credit for that because they do it a lot, but it's just neat to hear some of those stories. So the public doesn't realize this, and environmentalists might be against it, but people don't realize how ranchers in their management practices can actually use grazing as a tool for land health. And again, this is especially on the public lands. And Ben, you know all this about this being a rancher, and I'm sure Ashley, your family up in Holbrook, get this as well. So talk more about that. What does it mean for grazing when it's done right to actually be a health practice for our public lands?
in Arizona, we like to say graze it, log it, or watch it burn. and we watch it burn year after year in Arizona. That's because we're not grazing it enough, and logging for a long time is essentially dead in Arizona. Um, and so I think right now, the U.S. Forest Service has a priority, especially to log, but also to expand grazing. And grazing reduce, more grazing, less fuel for fires, and more trees saved in the long run. And so I think that's one example of how cattle can improve landscape health. I saw in California, in Los Angeles, they we're actually paying people to put goats out to graze to reduce the fuel for fires. So it's not a partisan issue anymore.
Yeah, and I've heard Ben say a few times the cattle on our ranch actually sequester more carbon than they emit, and so I think that that's something that's always really neat to share with people.
Yeah, so we have just to expand on that, we have mesquite trees throughout the ranch. We have each mesquite tree sequesters about 50 pounds of carbon. And so you need like 175 mesquite trees to offset one cap. Well, we have over 300 mesquite trees per cap. And so and they're responsible for spreading the trees themselves. The cows are literally out there planting trees that sequester carbon. So they're offsetting with carbon.
I love that.
That's amazing.
One other story I hear, and I don't know if your ranch family, Ben, has had to do that, but I love hearing the stories as well about people that, maybe they do finally get an allotment on a public land and they realize that the native grasses have kind of been overtaken by invasive species. And one of the things that they do is introduce the native grasses, and the fact that they're now getting to graze that area again, it's helping that. So there's all sorts of ways that you guys are contributing to the public lands and doing it wisely and with great health.
Yeah, I don't think most people realize about that, but it
Yep.
is a great service and does help with fire prevention too.
Yep.
And you had mentioned a few minutes ago about the New World screwworm, and we've been seeing it in Texas and now New Mexico. Give us your thoughts on that and any steps you can take to help protect and prevent it from spreading to your herds.
So the screwworm has been treated in the past with the sterile fly, and that's the method that USDA is continuing to promote now. The sterile fly will breed with the screwworm and render it sterile, and then it'll die, and that's how we will prevent screwworm from spreading. It's as you said, it's closer to us in our own nation than it is from Mexico now, as far as Arizonans go. And it's about 400 miles from our eastern border. And so, what we're trying to do, as far as Arizona Farm Bureau and Arizona Cattle Growers and the Department of Agriculture and U of A, we're trying to get a sterile fly dispersal facility where the historic one was in Douglas, Arizona. And this facility was operational from 1964 to 1984. My dad remembers when this facility was there. He had screwworm on his ranch, which was near Alpine, and he called the facility, and they came and dropped a box of sterile flies. And he said they got it in the wrong spot the first time, but then they came the next day and dropped it again. And so he says that was the best government program that he knows of. So I think a lot of ranchers say that. So we're trying to get that again. I think it's safe to say, as far as Arizona goes, we're not prepared if the screwworm is here. And in particular, we have feral cattle throughout our state. One of them is one of the largest. uh, One of the largest herds is on the border with the Tohono O'odham Nation, and we want to be able to have a managed herd of cattle, especially on the border, so that screwworm doesn't spread. So that's why Arizona Farm Bureau has been trying to get a fence line along the Tohono O'odham Nation, so that we could have a better chance of managing those cattle in the event that screwworm would get into that herd.
One of the points that in some of the research I've been doing and just listening to the USDA, and why Ben brings that point up is that once it's detected somewhere, vets, ranchers, they have to be more vigilant about making sure that their cattle are healthy and that not anything is happening, because once the screwworm fly lays her eggs, or the larvae, I guess, in any open orifice or wound, then that's when it's a brutal fly. So, but the other thing that we've been encouraging for those that have questions for us is this is not a food safety issue. It's an animal health issue. And that's why the Arizona Department of Ag, Arizona Farm Bureau has been mentioned. The Arizona cattle growers are being so vigilant about trying to, come up with ways, including having that sterile fly release facility that we did back, a couple decades, actually 3 or 4 decades ago now. Whatever happened? But
Yeah, definitely not a human food safety
right,
issue.
right,
Yes.
because once it's detected, but the problem is, to Ben's point, is the feral cattle that are roaming and wandering all over because they're not really in a confined area, correct, Ben? Is that what
If you don't see
causes the
if you
problem?
don't see the cattle, then there's no way you could treat it. And so a lot of these herds, nobody's laying eyes on these cows for years. So that's one thing that really worries me.
Yeah, I know why you were so concerned. And do you think that the USDA, do we have a better chance of the USDA opening up a fly release facility like they did so many years ago, now that it's been detected in the United States? Is that
I would hope so. You know, the facility that they funded, the $750 million facility in Moore Airfield in near Mission, Texas, that's exactly 1,000 miles away from my house. And so, what do I do when if I get screwworm? Do I call that facility and they fly 1,000 miles away? That doesn't really seem economical or feasible. So that's why they had these facilities. I think the one in Arizona might have been serving New Mexico as well, because I haven't heard of one in New Mexico. But I would hope that we're on a priority list for USDA. I've heard both in my trips to DC. I've heard that the USDA doesn't want to do it, then they've given indications that they might, and so um, I I failed to see why they can't fund the facility, because that's how it was eradicated before. It was a successful program before.
yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a simple solution, but it's never simple when you get government and everybody else involved and you have to go through a lot of hoops.
Yep.
But and speaking of government, you as public land ranchers, do you all have to deal with any bureaucratic hurdles as part of that package?
Well, I don't know if there's a bureaucratic hurdle we don't have to deal with. uh, so, before I mentioned the National Environmental Policy Act, and that would be my best example of the bureaucracy. I was told that I would have to wait 10 years in order to drill a well, which was needed. And so we might as well not go through the NEPA process because it's going to take you 10 years. Well, that was 12 years ago. And, that's just one of the side effects, I would say, of NEPA taking so long, is the government just decides not to pursue it, because the paperwork is so burdensome. Um, one of the things that isn't necessarily related to the government, but there is a non-government organization called Center for Biological Diversity, and they're suing. Their entire business model is to sue and settle and to get cattle off of these public lands. And so they're based out of Tucson, and I think they've sued every district in BLM and every forest on U.S. Forest Service land. And so that's one of the things that we have to deal with is that if the government loses one of these lawsuits, then it comes out of their local budget. And so that's less of a budget to manage the public lands like they should. Um, and so I think that's important for the general populace to know.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking because I mean even your first example about how long it would take to be able to get water, cattle like us have to drink every day. You can't wait 10 to 12 years
Yeah.
to put
Yeah.
in a water system. And one of the other things I wanted to highlight with you, Ben, is you've worked on legislation like the Wolf Act and issues around public lands perceptions. So, staying on this kind of excessive regulations or ones that really just don't work for ranching, lengthy reviews, all those kind of issues. Um, some of the broader goals like wildfire mitigation and habitat maintenance, even in some of these real straightforward things that you kind of have to contend with on a daily basis. Is that also an area where you just feel like we're getting bogged down, we're not getting to advance? How do you kind of leap over this and overcome it?
I think the topic I want to talk about with regard to this is grazing in riparian areas. We have a riparian area that the Gila Box National Riparian Area, which is the Gila River basically that comes through our ranch, and have we had a decision when I was first grader to decision us out of the river to where we couldn't graze the Gila Box, and so did every other ranch along the Gila Box. And so the accumulation of the time and money that ranchers spend getting cattle out of the Gila Box is an added expense that they shouldn't have to deal with because it doesn't keep the riparian area any healthier. In fact, those places that aren't grazed are much more unhealthy. They're much more overgrown. Tamarisk is taken over. You can't even get through a lot of them. And plus, the river floods about every 10 years anyway, and so it wipes out any vegetation. So there was really no reason to prevent grazing in the Gila Box, but we were the only ranch that sued. We sued in the BLM and won in the state court, and then we went to the Ninth Circuit, and there was a decision that was in our favor there. And so we're the only ranch along the Gila Box that can legally graze it. And so we have the
Really?
Wow.
healthiest riparian area because it is grazed. And so
Ben, I thought I knew so many stories about your family. I did not know that. That is amazing.
Yeah.
the
That's
Ninth
that's
Circuit
crazy. Good
is a
for
tough
you.
court for ranchers to win in. And my dad went to the UC Berkeley campus and made his case there.
Gosh.
Really?
Yeah, they had.
Well, I mean, and there are so many ways that ranching and the environment work well together. Um, Talk a little bit about that, in like water infrastructure, protecting wildlife, habitat work. Talk a little bit about, all of the things that ranching does to protect the environment.
Well, yeah, I think that the waters that we put out and maintain for our cattle, they are the prime example of what we're doing for the environment and for wildlife in particular. On our ranch, it's pretty much quail. There's deer and the bighorn sheep, but I think the quail populations are something that a lot of wildlife refuges would be envious of. And so we put wildlife ramps so where the quail can access the water and drink and go back down. And so that's something that I enjoy seeing out there. What other ideas do you
Yeah, I'd say the same about our water infrastructure. I think that the salt that we put out, not just for our cattle, but also it benefits the deer and elk population that we have here. And with Ivy, it's been fun to see her experience the wildlife. Just the other day, Ben sent me a video. He was out checking water, and so Ivy was in the back seat looking for cows, and he said he was kind of zoned out, and so he didn't even notice them. But she was in the back seat and said, "Dad, look, deer!" And it was actually a bighorn sheep. But so it was neat for her to get to
Oh,
experience that on
Yeah.
our ranch as well. He said he never would have even, he was such in the zone that he didn't even notice them.
Yeah. She said, "Wait, wait, wait, deer, deer, deer." Hmm.
And so it's really nice to know that the work that we're doing not only promotes the health of our ranch, but it promotes the health of the wildlife around us. And we work with a lot of organizations that have grant programs and different things like that, Game and Fish, doing work with the deer.
Yeah, Arizona Game and Fish knows this. They know that ranchers are, expanding the populations of our state's big game. And also, these animals, if we weren't providing water in the upland areas, they would all be in the riparian areas, like I talked about before. And so they didn't want more animals in the riparian areas. So that's another benefit.
I love the pictures that the ranchers send me when sometimes you'll see both wildlife and the cattle at the drinker at the same time. So if you run into any pictures like that, if you have them in your camera roll, you guys are going to have to send those to me too, because it's just proof of the pudding. In fact, there was one photo that I got from one rancher where a black bear was at the drinker drinking, and the cattle were kind of lined up, uh, obviously a little bit away, but he captured it in the same picture. I don't know if that's that
That's
common, and maybe the bear got friendly with the beef, but that doesn't seem like that would fit because I think bears like beef as much as we do. So,
Oh, and I would love to see a picture of those little quail going up the ramp.
yeah, that's, yeah. My dad has a drinker. Go ahead. I was just going to say, Dad has a drinker, and lately he's been seeing a lot of javelina, deer. What was the other wildlife? I can't remember. But anyway, okay. So, last question for both of you, and I'll let you answer first, Ashley, just in case Jeffrey starts talking again and you have to leave. But if since you guys are the next generation of ranchers, actually, you're knee deep in it, boots on the ground, what 2 or 3 things do you want to share with our listeners?
I think what I one of the points that I had said earlier is something that I always want to share with consumers, and it's that we are raising us as agriculturists throughout the state are raising and growing food that we want to not only feed to our families, but to feed to your families as well. And so we're doing it with the utmost care because our family's health matters to us more than anything. And so I would never sell a product to a consumer that I wouldn't feed my own family. And I think that sometimes people forget that. I think right now a big coined word is big ag, and they think of these factory farms and ranches. But they forget that 90% of the of ranches and farms in America are family owned and operated. And that's really the beauty behind it, is that we're putting our heart, our sweat and tears into something that we want to feed your family and ours. And so that's one of the big things that I have there. And then I think the second thing, and then I'll let Ben share, is, if you have questions about agriculture or what's, why we do something that we do, reach out to Farm Bureau, reach out to your local ag organization and have them connect you with the farmer and rancher, and go take a tour, go see it firsthand. I think that as we know, people are really removed from where their food and fiber comes from, but we're so open to educating people and to show them what we're doing. And so make sure you do that. Also follow them on social media. The power of technology. You can follow them firsthand and learn from a farmer rancher from behind your phone screen. And so I would really suggest that the listeners do that.
So what I want to
Love
say,
it, Ashley. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I made this point before to you, Julie, but if you had asked someone in 1934, or even today, if you asked someone from east of the Mississippi if um, this system of public land ranching where everybody can come onto your ranch and bird watchers, bicyclists, hunters, recreationists of every kind can come onto your ranch and and experience it. I would say that they would probably tell you that that wouldn't work, but it works, and it works largely because of the American rancher. And I think that we're very fortunate to be able to have a multiple use idea in our state, and for everyone to be able to enjoy the public land as well as us to be able to raise beef on public lands.
Awesome. Ashley and Ben, thank you so much. I know you guys are busy, 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 but blessings to you. And just stay in touch with us because we may have you on again. Or- Thank you, thank you, thank
Thank
you.
you
Thank
so
you.
much
Yeah,
for
next
being
time we'll
with
come in
us.
studio. That'd be great.
We'll need a babysitter in studio then.